Hey, this is Jeremy and welcome back to Blender for Designers. Today I'm going to be taking a look at metal and gloss. Now these are both types of reflections, both different ways that you can reflect light in an object. Now I'm going to do this in Blender, where you see we have metal and gloss, and in Photoshop. Most of the tutorial is Blender, so if you want to skip to the Photoshop part, I'll put a link down in the description. Before I do anything, I'm going to go on my shelf here and grab some real-world examples, because it's always good to get reference. These are glossy, these are metallic. So let's first start with gloss, which is way more common. So this is just a package. These are delicious, by the way. And as you can see, as I rotate this in the light, that this has a reflection, a glossy type reflection in the red. You can in the white as well, but you can particularly see it in the red because it's a darker color. And I'm going to take a metallic thing, obviously, and you can see it also has a reflection, but the reflection is actually in full color. You can kind of see it reflected in my windows and the books all around and everything. And so that's basically the big deal, is that metallics reflect all the colors and gloss reflects white. That's somewhat of an oversimplification, but that's the big general principle. And you can see this also in, here is another Trader Joe's thing, where you can see these kind of copper and gold colors. So you're reflecting color, full color in the metallics. They use a process called foil stamping for this, which creates these metallics. And you can see that they reflect not just the colors around the room, but also reflect in color, in the yellows and the kind of browns. And finally, we're just going to show one last thing, which is a glass, which is, of course, it does other things other than be glossy, but a lot of gloss is coating, so you can see around the glass. You can see that it's reflecting the white, and if you put something in there, you would have it become glossy. So that's sort of a general, always grab some real-world things and kind of manipulate them around before you get started. But let's go ahead and go into Blender here. So here we are in Blender, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a monkey so we can take a look at the gloss and metallics of this. So image mesh monkey, and I'm going to go ahead and subsurf her as well. Let me get my head out of the way. Let me just add a subsurf right there and turn it up to 2. So she looks a little smoother, and we're going to smooth her out, and then we're going to go ahead and zoom in here. All right, now I'm going to tweak a few things. We're not even using the camera to start out with. We're going to go ahead and make this I feel is way too wide angle, so we're going to go to a 60mm lens. And then we're going to go ahead and get rid of the timeline and then split the view here so we can do some manipulations with materials. And I'm going to bring a node editor up here. And by the way, I'm in cycles. It's my default. It probably should be your default too. Blender internal is way outdated. To reflect things, obviously we need a environment to reflect. I went over this in my environment map tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and pull up an environment that I made. I'm actually using this for my Mockup 3D application or something very much like it. The way we create an environment is you got to go into materials here, and then you use environment and use nodes. And it's really pretty simple. Let me just full screen this here so you can see what I'm doing. You go to add a texture, and it's got to be an environment texture. And then you can open, I have a bunch of environment maps here that I'll be playing with, but you can open the environment map that you want to use and just go ahead and connect it. And then, what you do, and then what happens when you hit Shift Z, which is render, you will see that the environment map is all around it. Now we don't have a material on this guy yet, so it's not really doing anything particularly interesting. So let's go ahead and create that material. I'm going to change it to a texture, shader principled, which is sort of the Uber shader that they came up with in 2.79. And that's the reason I'm going to do that. Is you'll see in a minute, it's got like a little lovely little metallic slider. We can go ahead and play with the metallic slider, and you can see it goes metallic. And actually, I'm going to up down the roughness a bit so we can actually really see that this is basically what we're looking at. This is glossy. Just let's get her nice and big here. This is glossy, and then you up the metallic right here, and it's metallic. So Now, to better see what we're doing, I'm going to go ahead and isolate her. Her name is Suzanne, by the way. That's why I've referred to her. So we're going to go back to the environment nodes, or the world nodes. And this is actually a quick tip I did a while back. I'll put a link to it. But what you can do is we can create, basically similar to how we do material mixing, we can create a mix shader. And then I can mix just a plain background with the environment map. Right now it's just going halvesies, but what I want to do is I want to show a plain background when the camera is engaged. So to do that, we go to input, and we want to go to light path. So then we use is camera ray to mix the environment map and just the plain old environment. So when we do that, we'll see now we have a gray background, but we have the environment map reflecting in Suzanne. So I'm just going to keep that, and I'm going to lighten it up just a little bit here. So let's try this with a slightly different color. So I'm going to add input RGB. Obviously, you could just select the color there, but I'm going to play with the color so we can kind of see. Let's go for a nice gold, right? But that's of course not actually a gold. That's just more of a brown, kind of a light brown. And that's because I have it obviously in the glossy, and that's what I showed in the thing I was doing initially. But then we do metallics, and that's already 0.2 metallic. This is 0 metallic. We do metallics, and we get a nice gold if a little bit dark. Let's brighten that up. And actually what we can do too is we can go ahead and brighten up the environment just a little bit so we can kind of see better what we're doing. Let me go back to the gloss here. One thing we kind of notice, we get a lot of kind of rim lighting here. And that's because this principled BDSF automatically puts in what's called a Fresnel. So you get glossier edges, the kind of things get glossier on the edge than they do in the center. All right, so one thing I'm going to do is knock the metallic all the way down so we just get glossy, or go all the way up. It's actually rare in the real world that you'll have partially metallic things. It's not unheard of, but metallic should either be pretty much an on or an off thing. Now, as I said, with glossy, as you see here, we get white reflections, and metallic, we get metallic ones. And now this is how you do it in Blender, which is obviously CGI and tries to do a fairly realistic job of creating these glosses of metallic. But let's take a look at Photoshop, and let's take a look at more of an illustrative type thing. Now this I have, as you can see, is the chrome look. Let me get my little head out of the way. This is basically imitating a reflection. So basically all I have here is just a gradient. Let me see if I can show you this gradient. This is just a layer style with gradient overlay. So we're going kind of from a light blue to a white to a dark pretty quickly, and then very quickly to another kind of a light gray, or a kind of a warm, darkish gray. And what I'm kind of simulating here is an environment map. It is basically, you're looking at here is the sky, kind of going to a horizon and going to kind of ground, which is sort of a warm gray. And it actually gets even better if you set a bevel and emboss. So let me go back to effects menu, and unfortunately I put it right in the middle there, didn't I? So if I go to this bevel and emboss, you can kind of see that it actually gets even better because we kind of have this weird contour that's kind of creating these highlights here. And this is, totally illustrative, and it's totally text. You can just change it however you want. But that's kind of how you create an illustration. And it's kind of looking at this would be like kind of simulating an outside type reflection. Like you'd be thinking of these, as I said, a sky horizon, something, it would be sort of like a reflection map that would be not that, but sort of like this. This is something from Video Copilot, but you kind of have a sky and reflection. And that's because you can think of Chrome as being outside. You think of it as being like on a car or something like that, you think of like fenders is particularly the thing you think when you think Chrome. So you think outside, and that's why a Chrome look would have that kind of look. And then let's also take a look at something else, which is the gloss look. And this is another just bevel and emboss. But basically what I'm doing here is I've gone to layer, to the effects, to the bevel and emboss, but then instead of doing, again, I have this little hump. And then the other thing is I don't actually have to deal with this, but basically you don't have any dark, you don't have any shadow, because as we had said, back going into Blender, that gloss means basically white reflections. So that's kind of what we do to kind of create this glossy look in Photoshop. Now back to Blender, I'm going to go ahead and break down how the principled BDSF works, like how you would do this with just normal nodes. So you can kind of see how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that off, and we'll just get rid of the principled BDSF for now. And what we're going to use is a diffuse shader, oddly enough. I think I would have figured this out after knowing that it's in alphabetical order, but that's the diffuse shader. So what we want to do is, as I said, put white highlights in there. So what we need to do is we need to get some white highlights. So what we need to do is add a gloss shader. Yeah, you'd think you'd start with the gloss shader, but actually you'd be wrong. So we're going to have the gloss, and we're going to turn the roughness. Let me zoom way in so you can see this. Roughness way down. Instead of 0.2, we're going to go to 0.02. In fact, we're going to maybe go to 0.01. You know, I don't want to be totally glossy, but yeah. And then so what we want to do is we want to mix the two. So shader, mix shader. So that's diffuse, and that's glossy. Now, you probably mostly want diffuse to kind of get that glossy look. If you go glossy, you basically get metallic. You know, just a regular gloss shader gives you metallic, which is honestly a little bit confusing. So, to actually get glossy material, you want to mix diffuse and glossy. And now people are going to start yelling at me because I didn't do Fresnel, which I'm about to do. So basically what happens is, I mentioned Fresnel is things get glossier as you go on the edge and you go straight forward. And that's not happening right now. So let's make that happen. So what we can do is you can add an input, and conveniently enough, named, not the Fresnel one, oddly enough, the layer weight. See, this is why it's confusing. You have, you know, glossy is actually metallic and layer weight is actually Fresnel. It's kind of confusing. So that's partially why I'm going over this, and partially why the principled shader really helps. So, but this actually has a Fresnel input, so we can put that in the mix node. And that's more of a glossy. And I usually think, you know, for just sort of a regular gloss material, 0.5, the default is usually a bit high. So I go down to 0.3 or 0.2. And, you know, this is actually basically, this blend slider here is actually basically your roughness, your gloss amount slider when you're developing a glossy material. So great, that's lovely. But what about metallics? Well, that's obviously a bit more straightforward. As I said, the gloss BDSF is basically a metallic. So if we go zoom in again here, if we create another gloss BDSF, and then we put the color in there, and we just connect that up directly. Yeah, you basically have a metallic, and then that's obviously a somewhat rough metallic. And, you know, probably if you want like the chrome look, you go here. But actually, I do kind of like the kind of not super rough metallic look. But I'm actually going to show you how, because sometimes metallics, like sometimes they have coatings on the outside. So sometimes you actually want to do the same mix here with the metallic. You know, basically we had the gloss here, but you can actually mix the metallic instead of the gloss in there. So you kind of have a metallic with a gloss coating. So you kind of have, yeah, in fact, let's up the roughness of the gloss a little bit. So yeah, we're kind of mixing a white with the gloss. So you have like kind of an outer gloss with the metallic in the center. And this would be, you know, something like you'd have just metallic coated, you know, with a varnish on it or something. But otherwise, it's actually pretty nice to go, you know, kind of straight metallic. And so that gives you a metallic and a gloss with some simple nodes. And of course, it goes either metallic or gloss, which, as I said, is how things usually work. It's either metallic or gloss. Now, the principled BDSF does not work exactly like this. It probably has some more things about Fresnel. I actually don't know the details on it, but it probably has some more things with Fresnel where the gloss is probably glossier here. But it's basically the same kind of idea. And obviously, the Fresnel has a slider, so they've established that a bit better. But this gives you an idea of how it's constructed with the very basic nodes. So now that explains how to create different materials that are either metallic or glossy. But what if you want the same material to have metallic and glossy parts? In other words, what if you want a texture that mixes both metallic and glossy? And that's exactly what I did here at the intro thing, which I'll bring back up again. And there we go. As we can see, there's a metallic, the metal is metallic, and the gloss is glossy. So how do we do that? Now, the first thing we have to do is build the cylinder. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and speed through it. There's nothing particularly complex about it. It's basically a cylinder with a chamfer, which is basically you make a cylinder, you put a bunch of subsurf on it, and then you put some edge loops to kind of create this nice little chamfer, which can catch lighting nicely. Not so much in this one because it's diffuse, but you can generally catch lighting with it. And then I unwrap it. You unwrap the sides using a cylindrical wrap, and the top and the bottom using a projection, a straight projection. So you top and the bottom, you can just do straight projection, and the cylinder you just wrap. And then go into Photoshop and create a texture using the three elements of text. And you can probably see me, I'm kind of tweaking the texture, tweaking the unwrapping, just kind of getting it right. You know, like with anything, you got to kind of tweak it. It's not a straightforward thing. So that's why I'm not kind of going to go into an in-depth tutorial, and also because this is more about gloss and metallic. But this should be finishing about now, so let's take a look at it. Now, this actually is the final file that was rendered. It's got me in the background, so I could place this in the right spot with the camera. It's got the full texture. It's got the animation. But I'm going to go ahead. We're going to talk about the texture. So basically, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this material. Just yank it out. And we'll create a brand new one so we get a nice, fresh start. And that's a very goofy image of me. It's just a screen cap. I'm going to get rid of it so we can just see things. This is the camera. Let me see if I can show you the whole thing here. This is the camera just zipping around, and we have the same sort of thing with the environment map. Oh, and we have that as transparent. To untransparent, you go to film, transparent, and then so yeah, it's basically the same kind of thing. You know, basically an environment map going around here, but you have the environment reflecting on the object, but you don't have it. You have just a plain color in the background. So let's actually go ahead and select this and create a new material so we can actually see what we're doing. And then I'll get rid of the diffuse shader. We're just going to go ahead and use a principled BDSF, which is the Uber shader, as we all know. So now we have a white diffuse, which is basically the exact same thing we had before, which is a white diffuse material. Let me just clear that a little bit. And so now how do we mix? We obviously can go back and forth between metallic and glossy, and let's just turn the roughness way down so we can really see this thing shine. But right now it's just blank. So we got to have their image on there. So let me go ahead and show you the images that I have. So this is the Photoshop file I've created. It's right here. And as you can see, I have the UVs on top. And I just decided to put the metal and gloss right in the middle. You saw me do that earlier. So what we're going to have to do is I want these to have three different textures. I want this metal texture to be metal, and I want this gloss to be gloss, and I want this to be diffuse. And then, of course, I want the background to not do anything. So I've had to export three different textures. So we have metal, text, and gloss. So cool. I've already exported them. You can just save a PNG out from Photoshop to do that. So let's get them in here. So let's just bring this up, add a texture, image texture. Here you can see we have metal and gloss. So what do we do with them? Let's move end over here, and then let's just start with a nice simple mix node. And then we can use alpha here. We're actually just going to go ahead and use the alphas from them. So we're going to go mix this gold color with black. So let's get the black here, or very dark gray. So actually that's exactly the reverse of what I want. Let's make this nice and dark gray, and then this will be the gold color. Nope, exactly the opposite of what I wanted, once again. So that'll be the gold color. But let's go ahead and get the exact color from Photoshop. Why not, right? I believe it's right here. You hit I to use the eyedropper, and then you just copy the hex value, hide that, and then we can go ahead and go into hex and paste that in. So there we go, perfect. Now I got the exact color I want. And how do we make this? Well, we can just make this metallic by going like this, but how do we make them alternately metallic? Let's just do the simple metallic case first. So what we want to do is you basically want to mix glossy and metallic. So you do basically the same thing here, but we can mix color. We can mix metallicness instead of color. So this we want to be super, this we want to be not metallic at all. So we leave that as black, and this we want to be super, super metallic. So we're going to leave that as white. And we can just go ahead and put that in here. So there you see, okay, we have a black and the metal, and that is metallic. So that's lovely, but we want to get the rest of that in here, and we probably want this not diffuse. So let's just, first of all, how do we make both the metallic and the gloss be metallic? So what we can do is we can add metallic and gloss. So let's do a converter add. Sorry, math, which would come up by default as add. So we're going to take alpha from here and alpha from here. So this is going to be metal and gloss together. And then we're going to take that and dump that in here. This is so only the gloss is the metal is going in there, but both of them are going into the color. So how do we, if we wanted to make them both metallic, we do that, but we don't actually want to do that. So this actually probably probably leave that like this, which is nice. All right, so now we have metal and gloss, and now of course we want to get the and in there as well with the right color. So we can duplicate that, and then we can let's just enlarge this and then give us some space here. And then we can add once again, let's rearrange things. So we're going to add this to the and value. In fact, I'm going to just reverse that. Perfect. And then we will do that as our color factor. So now we have all three of them. So how do we want to deal with the glossy? So what we want is we want glossy to be glossy. So let's go ahead and we actually have I forgot I had the color in here. We should probably put just the alpha, although it doesn't actually really matter. So let's get ahead and get the alpha in here and then put that into roughness. Actually, it should probably be the opposite of what I am trying to do, which is exactly correct. So let's just reverse that. See, I never get these right. You always have to just check it visually. I'm a very visual person. All right, so now the glossy, it's hard to see a little bit, but nothing is glossy except the glossy. Now, we may not want that to be completely the case. We probably want the glossy to be 100% glossy, but we do not necessarily want this to be 100% diffuse, so we can turn that back a little bit and just make it a little bit glossy. So this is why it's nice to have these things here for the control. So we actually don't want to call that metal, we want to call that gloss. It's weird they have a name and a label, but they do. So, so now it's really hard to see, but the glossy is in fact really glossy, but nothing else is. And we can actually see that if we turn up the specular. Let's just turn this up so we can really see the difference. Yeah, okay, you can kind of see it at the edges there. The gloss is the really glossy part, and the metal and the diffuse is not glossy at all. But we have a bit of a problem here since we want the metal to actually be glossy-ish. What we can do is, since we have metal added to gloss here, we can use this as the factor. So yes, now metal is glossy and glossy is glossy, but N is not glossy and the background is not glossy. But the problem here is that metal is 100% glossy. And now I don't really love metal that's like all super glossy. Like it's a little fake. I mean, I guess in some instances you could have like a really shiny chrome, but yeah, what I'd like to do is turn down the metal and kind of make it just a little bit glossy, kind of like that. But then you see the glossy doesn't get as glossy, so I want to be able to try to mix try to play with the two of them. So how are we going to do that? We're going to have to go and try something with the metal's gloss. So let's go ahead and use the alpha factor on the metal and bring that into here. And then this way we can go ahead and tweak, just like we were before, both the metal and the gloss. But then, yes, okay, that just brackets the problem over there. So how do we get the glossy, super glossy back? So we're going to duplicate this and bring the glossy alpha in here, and we're going to use multiply to make it darker. And I've gone over the blend modes in another video. I will link it. So there, cool. Now we should be able to adjust just the metal and the gloss. Ah, beautiful. Sorry, I tried this a couple times while I was recording. So it's good that we can kind of get metal to be just a little bit metal and then glossy to be super glossy. And honestly, we're not showing up too much of the glossy anyway. So that pretty much does it. I'm actually going to turn up the metallic gloss just a little bit. Remember, so roughness, so you're turning the roughness down rather than the gloss up, but roughness is the opposite of gloss. So if we were, let's go to 0, and then we can bring back the camera view, 0 to go to the camera view, and we can bring back my goofy little face and basically set up the animation and set up for render, which is exactly what I just did. And I'm going to put that rendering here one more time. And now I've been thinking about gloss and metallic a lot, since as many of you know, I've been developing this tool for designers called Mockup 3D, which is an online 3D tool. And as you can see, this tube now, the word tube, is much glossier. And so I've been thinking about gloss and metallic a lot as I develop this, and thinking about how gloss creates white reflections and metallic creates colored or full color reflections. So I'm going to go ahead and explore this a little bit, get my head out of the way, and I'm going to put a color back here, and we're just going to bring that into the rest of the tube, and I'm going to make this straight first of all, and then I'm going to hit the little G to make it glossy. I'll make this nice and big. And so you can see that this gloss word is much glossier than the rest of it. Now it's also a slightly different color, so we can make the colors exactly the same. So now that the colors are exactly the same, you can still see the gloss sticks out because it's reflecting much more than the background. And of course we have metal as well. This is actually, I believe the exact same color too. And we can make that metallic with an M. And that's obviously a different effect that reflects the colors in the background. So as I said, I've been thinking about this a lot. And then we can also use this color here, which is kind of a pinkish, but we can get rid of that. And then we can change this. Let's just change this to a nice dark gray. And now we have this pinkish color. It's not rose gold, but if we hit metallic, it will be. And as you can see, as I said, metallic is reflecting the colors, but then this glossy areas out here is reflecting the whites. So it's, it's what I've been actually developing and thinking a lot about. And so that's it. So thank you. Hope you guys found this interesting and useful. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button, and check out Mockup 3D if you're interested as well. It's at mockup3d.com. The live demo is at mockup3d.com/demo. Getting some cool interest in here. Love to hear your feedback on this, and still developing it, so what you say will totally affect what I do. And if you have already checked it out, please, thank you. And I hope you guys have a good run and use these things very well in your artwork. That was an awkward phrasing, but hope you guys use this well and make some cool looking stuff. All right, thank you.